This is the first recorded episode of No Retakes. We just got done watching Westworld, and it's got Yul Brynner in it and two guys who are probably Western stars who I don't know. So there's this resort where you can go, and there's these robots that are creating the fiction of three specific worlds. There's the Western world, like ancient Rome, and what's the other one? Medieval Europe. And so our story is centered on the Westworld, but we do actually have things happen in the other two, which was kind of interesting. I didn't actually expect that. But these two people, Peter and John, I guess, they go to Westworld for vacation. Peter has just, like, gone through a divorce or something. He was troubled. And his friend has decided to take him to Westworld to raise his spirits and have him boink some robot prostitutes and get to pretend to be a guy in the Wild West. So they get there, and the rules are explained. Almost everybody's a robot. There are a bunch of other tourists. You have a gun if you want to have a gun. You have a gun, and it will not shoot humans because it's got a sensor that won't shoot anything with body temperature. The robots are cold. The Peter is not really good at pretending to be in the Wild West at first, and he's like the typical, you don't know, I know the trope. I'm having trouble describing the trope. It's like the nerd shows up, and instead of ordering whiskey, he's like, give me a really fancy drink. Like, no, just order whiskey. But his friend helps him to acclimate, and they meet up with some robot prostitutes, and pretty soon they're enjoying each other. Pretty soon they're enjoying time with each other. Now let's get on better. And pretty soon they are enjoying the town in each other's company and getting into bar fights and getting to this guy played by Yul Brynner shows up and like jostles the guy so he spills his drink, jostles Peter, and John convinces Peter to get into a shootout. So they kill Yul Brynner in the first scene, and Yul Brynner's body gets dragged off by a couple of other robots and repaired for the next day. Because every day the whole place resets, and there was one time they didn't reset, and they had a bar fight and they had busted a bunch of scenery, and the guys woke up in the busted scenery and they hadn't reset. So we worked out that probably they don't reset if the guests are still in the area, but in general, every night they come in and they grab up all the dead robots and dead robot horses and dead robot snakes, and they go and take them back to their labs and fix them up. But apparently the robots are just starting to screw up. Their programming is warping or something. They've been noticing, they've got this big lab in the back where they have all of these futuristic computers for the time. This is like the 70s. So there's blinky lights everywhere, and there's the tape reels spinning all over the background, and these big, giant computer monitors playing a lot of screensavers of triangles bouncing around and things, and people trying to keep track of what's going on in the various places. So, like, this one guest over in the Middle Ages one, he wants to make out with the Queen, so they reprogrammed the Queen to be accessible, well, she's okay with infidelity now. So they will, on the fly, reprogram robots to respond to whatever the guests are interested in. In Westworld, when the second day hits and Yul Brynner comes up and threatens our heroes, Peter shoots him and he falls out a window, and next thing you know, Peter is arrested for murder. So he's sitting in the jail, and John arranges for him to be brought a thing of dynamite. So he breaks out of the jail with dynamite, and they ride off as outlaws, like, yes, now we can do whatever we want, and the sheriff's dead. But the other tourist, the only other tourist we have seen as a tourist in Westworld, takes up the sheriff's slot. And I don't remember him actually doing anything as a sheriff, other than, I'm sheriff now. And then he shows up at the bar fight, and he drinks a little bit and is caught off guard by the bar fight. I honestly don't remember a single other thing he did. But, when the third day hits, they've had some malfunctions going on. Things are not working quite right. And, the heroes wake up after a bar fight, and when they're walking down the street with hangovers and stuff, Yul Brynner shows up again. And they're like, oh, this again, do we have to? I've got a hangover. So Yul Brynner pulls his gun, and they arrange a shootout between John and Yul Brynner. And Yul Brynner surprisingly shoots John, who's like, oh, I've been shot. What the hell? And he falls over dead. And Peter's like, ah. And then Yul Brynner's like, all right, draw. So Peter, of course, runs away, like a sensible person. And he manages to get a horse, and I totally forgot the scene where they were out as outlaws, and John got bitten by a snake. Robot snake. But that has established earlier that the robots are doing some things that harm the guests, and you don't, that they're not quite responding to commands. There was also a scene in the Middle Ages area where the guy tried to come on to like this maid named Daphne, and she slapped him instead. And so the guys back at control are like, she's not supposed to slap a guest. She resisted his advances. What's going on? We need to like get her back and mess with her programming until she's fine with it. So we had hints of the robots going wrong, even if you weren't genre savvy enough to figure out that this was going to happen. So Peter ends up on a horse, and they have this long and mostly boring chase through the Wild West countryside of rocks and desert sands and stuff. And Yul Brynner has really poorly optimized vision, like really low resolution vision. When you see his vision a few times, but apparently he can follow humans better with that. But because of that, when Peter sets up an ambush for him, it totally fails because he can see. Actually, I think it was that he could hear. He could hear the guy breathing, and that spoiled the ambush. So Peter runs off, completely forgetting his gun there, which I actually thought was a nice touch because Peter is definitely not a gunslinger, so he's reverting to type. But he manages to, he runs into a maintenance guy who's like, nope, you're doomed, I can't even help you, goodbye, and gets shot by Yul Brynner just as Peter is running off again. The maintenance guys are all in white, and they have these little like golf cart buggy things that they drive through the desert with. And like they came out to pick up the snake after the snake had attacked John, and it was kind of bizarre. But anyway, so Peter goes downriver and finds his way to Rome, and he runs through Rome. But Yul Brynner is tracking him by his footprints leave heat signatures. And we actually debated for a bit about how long would a heat footprint last that Yul Brynner would be able to follow it. But anyway, he follows the heat signature footprints and finds that Peter has gone down into this maintenance shaft. And it's just these big empty tunnels everywhere with lights. It was like, who builds structures like this? But at the start of the movie, they had actually had cars, or if you go to like an airport, they might put you on a little car to drive you around, like 6 or 8 people all on it, and it doesn't have a roof. It was that kind of thing. And they would drive people to their destination that way. So he's running through there, and he finds the place where they repair all the robots. And he got told by the maintenance guy that the way to counter Yul Brynner's vision is to splash acid at his eyes. So there are conveniently sitting around vials of acid. I don't think they ever established what you might need acid for in repairing robots, but okay, he had like 4 different big vials of it. And he lies down on one of the gurneys right behind the big dead robot horse. And when Yul Brynner comes by and turns to look at him, he splashes acid in his face. And Yul was like, ah, brr. Oh, this whole time, Yul Brynner does not talk. At the start, he said a few words in the scene. And, he said a few words here, but from the point that he's shot John, he doesn't say another single word in the entire movie. Which was it was a really nice touch to up the creepiness. So instead of finishing him off or doing anything more useful that I would have thought that he could try, Peter just runs off again and is followed by the now blind, mostly blind, Yul Brynner, who can still see with heat vision somehow. So Peter finds his way to the medieval court, and he finds, he gets into the throne room or feast hall, and Yul Brynner catches up with him at that point. There's the queen and the queen's consort, the Black Knight, who are sitting on the throne, kind of like, we are dead. There were some side plots before of there's this husband and wife who the wife had gone to Rome and the husband had gone to medieval land, and they both had been boinking robots, and they got killed for it. There was an actual kind of interesting sword fight between the husband, who was mostly just hungry and didn't want to sword fight at the time. He's like, come on, dude. And the dude's like, through all of his food. But anyway, so Peter hides next to a torch, and because of the torch's heat, Yul Brynner is incapable of perceiving Peter. And he's kind of hearing his breath, but can't quite make out where he is, and keeps turning in circles until Peter hits a pot with his foot. It's like, clang! He found me! And so he grabs the torch and hits Yul Brynner with it. And I'm not sure what the clothing is that they make these robots wear, but you know how we have the, rules about clothing not being flammable? Well, imagine, the opposite. Because Yul Brynner goes up in a fireball that is, about twice as tall as he is. And I'm sure it's hitting the ceiling at some point. And he just, flails around on fire for a while. And I felt a little bit concerned for the stunt guy. But Peter runs off and manages to go down, for some reason, down to the basement of the castle, where he finds a lady who's been tied up, and we were debating whether she was human or not, but she turns out to just be a robot. They have a robot gal in the dungeon just to be either if a guest wants to torture her or a guest wants to rescue her from torture. There she is. She's waiting the whole time. I don't know how much she actually interacts with the guests at all. That's her purpose. But anyway, Yul Brynner gets down to where Peter is on the steps to the dungeon, and Peter is kind of fed up with this by now, just I don't have any energy left to deal with this. Luckily, Yul Brynner is a charred mess and falls off the stairs, and his panels all blow up and stuff. And so Peter just kind of slumps down wearily onto the steps and it's over. Even though you don't know how the heck he gets out, because earlier he found one of the maintenance rooms with the computers and everybody was dead. And we have seen nobody else alive in this entire place. And it's out in the middle of nowhere. And I don't know who might possibly rescue him, because he probably ended up just like starving to death here in medieval Rome, or medieval Europe world. Probably in about 3 days he's dead. So that is how Westworld ended. And did I forget any major sections? Probably. I can't think of them now. So that was Arkylie's No Retakes explanation of Westworld from like 1970 something. Oh, it's by Michael Crichton, Jurassic Park guy. We noticed quite a few Crichtonisms going through it. So, alright, thank you for watching.